Apostates Anonymous, the show you turn to when you're no longer an evangelical. With your hosts, authors Keith Giles and Matthew J. DiStefano. All right, welcome back, everyone. We are here for a real fun episode. We teased last time that we're going to talk about suffering and the problem of evil and theodicy. So let's keep it light. Let's keep it hilarious. Keith, how are you?
Yeah, doing great. This will be all about sunshine and rainbows. This will be really just a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of laughs, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, doing good. Looking forward to this topic, which is funny to say because it is a difficult one, but definitely something that people ask about all the time. So I know people have this question.
And I try to respect where everyone's at, but unless an atheist is talking about the problem of suffering, I don't think they have a great argument for atheism. But so when it comes to this topic, you say this is fun, but this is the biggest challenge for those of us who believe in God. Yes. And every respectable atheist worth their salt and philosophical and all that. Here we are. Theodicy, suffering.
Yeah, this is their go-to
should
argument.
be. Yeah, exactly. So we are going to have, I don't know, we will have answers to the problem of suffering, but
not the answer.
But not the, because there is no the answer. It's the absurd reality that we're faced with. So before we get into that fun, we do have hopefully some laughs. And like always, we have a wonderful sponsor.
Yes.
With everything going on regarding book banning and grooming children and things that are appropriate for our elementary school children. We cannot talk about a child's sexual orientation or gender.
That's right.
Just in case they're not heteronormative, and we don't want to even say those words, so we won't say them here on the podcast.
Can't say it. No.
Because in case DeSantis is listening, I don't want to offend.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
But we do have a wonderful book that we can put in the hands of children, and we have someone who's going to tell you all about it.
Bring it on. This nation is in trouble, friends. We've taken the Bible out of the classroom, and this has created confusion among our young people about godly marriage and sexuality. And that's why we need your help to put Bibles into the hands of every child in America. When your 5-year-old reads about Jacob marrying Rachel and her sister Leah, they'll understand the beauty of marriage from a biblical perspective. Or when your 9-year-old reads the story of how Noah's daughters got him drunk and had sex with him to get pregnant, they'll learn how important it is for women to bear children and start a family. Teenage boys who read the Song of Solomon will gain confidence when speaking to the opposite sex and learn how to compare the genitals of that girl they like in math class to ripe pomegranates or twin goats frolicking in the meadows of Lebanon. Teenage girls who read the thrilling story of Jael in the book of Judges will build self-esteem when they hear how she drove a 12-inch tent spike through the forehead of King Jabin as he lay sleeping soundly in her tent. And every young person will learn to respect their elders when they read the story of how God sent bears to maul children to death for mocking an old bald man on the road. Yes, friends, the Bible is an essential guide for today's children to read as their tender young minds are developing a sense of right and wrong. Help us put one of these lovely books into the hands of every American child today by sending $299 to www.intothebible.com. And let's save America's young people with the Bible. Oh yeah, you know what? I'm so glad. Yeah, thank you for our sponsor. It's so important.
I didn't catch their name. I don't know.
It was something into the Bible. Into the Bible. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's.
But in all seriousness, by the way, I did see the other day that there was some guy that did have a lawsuit where he was wanting to to get the Bible banned, like from school libraries and stuff, because it contains stories about rape and incest and murder and genocide and slavery, pro-slavery and all that kind of stuff. So.
I saw a clip of some sort of like online news person who goes to some of these like rallies, and he was asking some state representative candidate about this topic, about like books and what's appropriate for children and not. And so what was funny is the news person was asking him about these stories. I don't know exactly which one, but probably the Noah and the daughters one.
Sure, yeah.
That maybe the bear mauling, some divine mauling. But the guy knew, he like picked up on where he was going with it right away. He's like, I know where you're going with this. But then he just stumbled through because he knew you could see that he knew he was caught.
Yep.
Because he couldn't say, I mean, he was stuck between a rock
Right.
and another fucking rock. He knew he couldn't say that, yes, we need to get rid of this book because it's the Bible, and he's going to piss off his constituents, which are probably all Bible-believing Christians.
Right. Yeah. There's no winning.
But he couldn't say yet that's appropriate for children because it's like he knows those stories, so he knows they're not.
Right.
And he just like, it was, I felt low-key embarrassed for him because you knew he was stuck and like, oh, this motherfucker's stuck.
Yes. Yeah. I've also seen video of like people doing like people on the street kind of gotcha interviews with, just average people. And they're saying like, hey, there's a book that there's a group of people, they're trying to push this onto children and to get children to read this book. And it has stories of incest where like daughters, like have sex with their father. And they're like, oh, these old women are like, oh, that's horrible. Oh no, that's awful. Like, yeah, and we do you think children should be reading a book like that? Oh, absolutely not. Yeah. And he goes, yeah, that's the Bible. And you see their faces like, what? No, it's not. He's like, well, no, yeah. Genesis, he gives them the address. And yeah, it's like, it's the truth though, right? I mean, when our boys were little, we tried to read the Bible, like the real Bible to them. Like, let's just pull out the Bible and read Genesis to like, bedtime stories for our kids. And pretty quick as a parent, if you do that, if you read the actual Bible stories to your small children, you will very quickly realize that is an X-rated book. That if you
100%.
made a movie of this book, just like scene for scene, like just use the text and film what's in there, you would never let your children watch this thing. And you probably wouldn't feel comfortable watching it either because it is all about like rape and murder and incest and genocide and just horrible, horrible things. Like, like the whole thing about David getting like, 1,000 foreskins or something ridiculous.
So many foreskins.
Yeah. It's like, really? Who wants to see that?
I've thought,
Daddy, what's a foreskin? Yeah.
I've thought about doing like an activity book where you like part coloring, part like coloring by numbers, and like word search.
Yes.
Of just like Philistines, foreskins, like crossword puzzles, all sorts of shit like that.
Oh, dude, you know what? We should do that. That would be so awesome to do. Yes, like a literal. Was it like a Bible literalist's children's activity book? Like,
yes, exactly.
That would be so awesome.
Yeah. see how many people you can name that got drowned in Noah's flood.
Exactly.
Not that they're named, but
How many children, how many babies were drowned by God in the flood? Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, a cut by cut. Yeah. So the Bible is one answer to the problem of suffering. It's not a great one. So I'm hoping today we can give a I don't know. It's one of those things where most people who are thinking people have an I don't know answer. So I'll just come off the bat and say I don't know. Like, I don't know why. So the technical term for this is theodicy. How do you explain a good God who is powerful, or all powerful, as some would say, in light of the amount of suffering or any suffering or evil that is prevalent in the world? So the term is theodicy. So this will be our theodicy. And Keith, I don't know if you want to bite the bullet and jump off here.
Well, yeah, it's a tough one. Boy, we're going to do this for a whole hour, huh? Wow. Okay. All right. Well, so let me say, typically the problem of suffering theodicy is, like you said, it's the atheist argument. It's like, like you said, if it's either that if God is good and God is loving, and if God is also omnipotent, right, all powerful, then why is there so much suffering in the world? And then the answer must be either God is not good,
Right.
but is all powerful, right? But so God isn't
Right.
really good, so that's why God just lets all kinds of horrible things happen.
So, i.e.,
Or
Calvinism.
yes, there you go, exactly. Or God is good but not all powerful. So God is good, wishes God could do something about it, but can't because God doesn't have the power to do something about it. Right, or some combination of that, right? So God is either not
Yeah.
good or not all powerful.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, I mean, David Bentley Hart has famously said that this is the most difficult question for. Well, I think he said that for him, like when he's done
Yeah.
debates with atheists, he said, "Yeah, this is the one topic that really is almost impossible to answer because, well, if you frame the argument that way, then well, yeah." Um, but I think this is why, and I think we alluded to this in the previous episode, like people like Thomas J. Ord and Mark Karras and others have at least tried to respond to that specific argument by suggesting that no, God really is good and God really is love, but if we define love as not being coercive, then God isn't coercive. So this is the reason why God, quote unquote, allows. Although
Yeah.
they don't like that phrase. I mean, I think they would say it's not that it's wrong to say God allows evil because that implies that God could do something about it, but doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's not that God allows anything. It's that because God is love, because the definition of love is not coercive, by definition, being love, love can't do anything.
Yeah.
That's why Thomas J. Ord's book is
That's
God Can't.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
so
so the issue I have with that, and I'll just, that
yeah,
I first off, I will concede that that is a much better
yes,
understanding of things than Calvinism or the God allows thing.
yes,
Um, I don't like though it's true, God can work all things toward good. I think that's I'm okay with that statement. I
sure,
don't like that as an explanation because it doesn't
no,
really help the situation. But that being said, I disagree that love can't coerce. And I'll give you an example. If my daughter runs into the street, even though she's 11 and has some sort of autonomy and agency at 11 rather than 3, as kids develop, they become more of their own, individuals, so to speak. But
yeah,
if she happens to not notice a car running in the street, I will coerce the fuck out of her to stop her and save her life. And I would say that is a loving thing to do.
exactly,
So that's where I have a bit of a disconnect in that I would agree that for the most part, love doesn't coerce. But I can come up with certainly some instances where I would say, yeah, love does coerce in a way.
yeah,
I mean, I guess it depends on what we mean by coerce. I will physically manipulate someone's body in order for an ultimate good, I believe.
right,
Like moving a kid out of traffic if they run in the street, or
right,
if there's someone trying to stab someone, I will restrain them. I worked in group homes where I put hands on kids all the time to prevent fights and like people getting hurt. And
yeah,
I would say that's our modality was therapeutic and loving and compassionate. And so I would be curious.
yeah.
We don't have Thomas or Mark on the show, but I'd be curious as to what they would say to that.
So I have had some dialogue with both of them about this, and from what I remember, and please forgive me, Mark and Tom, if I'm misrepresenting you, but and it may be only one of them, one or the other, because I don't want to say that they're both exactly on the same page. I know there are
Right.
some,
Or
there's some,
Curtis Holzen as well, I believe, is in
yeah,
that
yeah,
camp. So
yeah.
so
So
people
they're
like that.
even with amongst themselves, they don't always agree on everything,
Sure.
but I
Sure.
think in general, at least I've heard at least one of them express in response to that kind of an argument. Um, that one of the reasons that God, quote unquote, can't do something, it's not just that God's nature precludes God from sort of like interrupting free will in that sense of the definition of coercion. But the other reason why God, quote unquote, can't physically restrains somebody from murdering someone or raping someone or killing someone or doing some horrible thing is that God is a spirit and doesn't have hands and or feet. In other words, that literally, no, but literally, God physically cannot physically interact with the physical world because God isn't physical. God has no hands and
Yeah,
feet. Like,
sure.
in other words, what methodology, what power, what would be the mechanism behind any coercion that God could do to interrupt somebody's free choice to do something bad? Now, so then they would say that what they would argue is that back to this idea that Christ has no body now but yours. And so the will of God to do good, to prevent evil, now that could be expressed in collaboration with a human being. So a human being could, be in tune with the will and the heart of God, which is love, and in a situation be aware of some evil, and yes, then now they can restrain the person, they can jump in the way, or they can pull the child out of the street or stop somebody from attacking someone. But God, quote unquote, God can only intervene in as much as we intervene. So
Mm.
and now that answer also is very close to what even some, let's say, atheists or agnostics that I know, Jim Palmer would be an example. Jim Palmer would say the same thing, but he would say it in the sense that God is not separate from us, and
Right.
in terms he's getting at the same idea, but he's expressing a different idea. So his idea would be, in fact, we had this exact conversation. We were in Nashville at the Awaken conference. Somebody asked him this question, like, why does God allow the war in Ukraine? Why does God
Right.
allow suffering? And he
Right.
said, when you asked a question like that, that is automatically assuming a separation between God and mankind. You say that as if human beings are down here on earth. We're experiencing a lot of suffering, and now we're looking up to God and saying, God, hey, over there, wherever you are, God, why don't you come down here and fix this? But that's separation. You're assuming God is somewhere else versus the idea that no, Christ is in everyone. And so who are you complaining to? When you say, God, why don't you do something? Where is God? Well, God is within you. So if you want to complain, you can complain, but the question should be directed at yourself in the sense, or in humanity. Like, why do we allow suffering? Why aren't we? Why is the Christ in us, in humanity, allowing these bad things to happen? Which I think
I,
is
I
another way to look at it.
I like the direction that that's going. I'm not sure that I think it helps with. It helps describe the examples you just gave, the war in Ukraine,
Yeah.
or someone assaulting someone.
Yeah.
I understand how their definition of free will might fit into that, though I don't. I think I would have a different definition of free will. I'd be more along the lines of Talbot
Yeah.
and Bentley Hart and all them.
But they're
And
not
I
truly
think
free because they're not
yeah,
free to do good. Yeah.
I think Ord and Karras might be more along the lines, and I'm just guessing, of Greg Boyd and the libertarian free will
Open theology.
understanding.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know how that helps with natural evil or so-called natural evil. The kid who gets cancer or the things of that nature, like, a brain-eating parasite getting into a 3-month-old and killing it.
Yes.
Like that, we can't stop that except through science and over time learning how to. But I don't even think we'll ever get to a place where we can stop all suffering, even the so-called natural suffering. So I'd
Yeah.
be curious on how they answer that. I think I like the direction that those folks would go,
Yeah.
because I'm to a place now where I don't even see God as like that which has a personality. I see God as simply like the pure potential in which all things are. So I'm more like panentheism. So I'm more like you.
Me too.
Yeah. Stop asking for some dude that doesn't exist, quote unquote, to do something, because
Yes.
God doesn't exist in that way. You and
Right.
I exist, and we are the only representation of God that we see in the world,
Right.
and ad infinitum to everything that exists. Right. So,
Yes.
so let's get off our ass and do something.
Yes. No, I totally agree with that. Now, so this maybe takes it to a different level. and I apologize if I have said something like this before, but again, I'm getting old, old man Giles.
Old man.
but see, I had my own sort of personal existential crisis along these lines when I was watching this Netflix documentary called My Octopus Teacher. If you haven't seen that, you should watch that. Listeners, it's really, really great. You should watch it. But so it's a documentary about this guy who's like a documentary filmmaker, and he kind of goes through a personal crisis, and he kind of takes some time off, and he happens to live off the coast of Africa near the ocean. So every day he takes his camera and he goes diving, and he sort of accidentally makes friends with a particular octopus that lives right there. And every day that he goes to dive, he encounters the octopus, and he and the octopus have some pretty amazing interactions. And but then there's a part of the documentary where, as he's filming this octopus, which he has now sort of developed almost a relationship with and a connection, and you as the viewer have too, all of a sudden there's these sharks. This one particular shark is like chasing this thing, chasing the octopus, and it's trying to get away, and he just films this. He just stands back. He doesn't chase the shark away. He just sits there and films to see what's going to happen. And I'm watching this on the one hand thinking, you asshole. Like, how could you just let this shark eat this octopus, which you have a connection with, right? Because I'm connected. I have an emotional attachment to this octopus. Like, I wouldn't want this to happen, but he doesn't do anything. And, spoiler, the octopus doesn't die, but it loses a limb or something. It actually does, like, you get bitten and it loses a limb or something.
He's got 8, so he's fine. He's fine.
Yeah. But at the same time, then later on, there's a scene where the octopus, it heals, it gets better, and blah, blah, blah. And then he follows it, and it like will capture like these crabs and stuff, and eat them. Or it would capture, these other kind of animals that it captures and eats. And then I was realizing like, I'm not like upset. I'm not like, hey, don't hurt that poor crab. But because like the octopus is sort of the hero. Anyway, my point is, as I'm watching this documentary, is like nature is really cruel.
Yeah.
Like this is the circle of life. Like, so as I'm watching this, I'm watching these animals that have to eat other animals to survive, to feed their young, and to perpetuate their species. And I see a lot of this as quote unquote evil. I'm just like, this is awful. Like, why do killer whales have to eat baby seals? Why do tigers have to hunt and kill baby gazelles, to feed their cubs and stuff like that? So I look at this and I think, wow, why is nature so evil, quote unquote evil or cruel? But it's me. I'm imposing evil onto those things. Whereas to the animal, that's just Tuesday. What are you talking about? This is just the way things are. And so I think on one level, there's also a level of just recognizing that the world, is about living and suffering and dying. Like it doesn't matter what you are. You could be a snail, you could be a mouse, you could be an octopus, you could be a giraffe. Whether you're at the top of the food chain or somewhere in the middle or at the bottom, you are going to suffer. And you're going to be killed or eaten or hunted or die or suffer loss. Something you love is going to die. Someone you care about is going to die or get hurt. Like, this just is reality. And so I wonder in some ways, like when we ask this question, why is there so much suffering in the world? And typically what we mean is human suffering, like you said, cancer.
Right.
But it's like, but widen your focus and notice that this is how the entire universe operates. Like, this is life on planet Earth across species. They're suffering. So I just wonder and again, aren't human beings the only? In other words, I can't imagine that tigers are having this conversation. Like, man, why is there so much suffering in the world? Or even that any other animal would have this kind of concern about, man, there's just a lot of evil in the world. Humans do. We're the ones who I guess it's the whole like eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? We're the ones judging where this is good or this is bad, or this is right or this is wrong. It seems like no other species on planet Earth makes those sorts of judgments. We do. And so I guess what I'm saying is it evil? Or is it just this is our perception that it shouldn't be this way, that it could be or should be a different way?
Well, I think we all recognize that it could be and should be a different way. I mean, at least that's the traditional Christian message of a restored Earth, right? The before before eschatology got corrupted by evangelicalism, like N.T. Wright, his approach to a collision of heaven and earth, where I think most Christians would argue there will be a time of no suffering. But that's not just a Christian message. I think that's also a Buddhist message. The Four
Sure.
Noble Truths ends with the fact that there is an end of suffering. So, I mean, we all seem to envision a time and place where suffering won't occur. But then again, maybe
But is that wishful thinking?
yeah, I mean, it
Well,
might be wishful thinking of like, but then it kind of raises the question: is the idea of heaven wishful thinking?
right. Or is the idea of heaven as a place where all suffering ends realistic? I mean, but we could definitely takes us in so many other directions we could to ponder, like, because I guess I don't know that I believe. I mean, I used to, like you just said, like the lion will lie down with the lamb, and
Right.
there's
Then what is
there
the lion eating?
right lambs. I know that's the whole point. I mean that exactly that metaphor is intended to say that the entire every living thing on this planet will experience this shift from suffering and quote unquote evil, one thing killing and eating another innocent thing to survive. Like all of that will one day change and it will not be that way anymore. But okay, so again, maybe it's wishful thinking or not, but I guess the question is like, I guess it takes us back to the beginning. If that's possible, then why don't we have that world now? Like, why didn't God just make it that way in the first place? And then you get into the whole bullshit. I know that it's because Eve ate that fruit or whatever. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know,
and
man.
I think we're asking a question that, I mean, to ask the question of what other way could, I mean, that's highly speculative. You know,
I
it's
know.
like it's very rhetorical and almost unanswerable. However, I will say that my personal belief is that God doesn't know everything until God
Right.
experiences something. So
Right.
there's the idea of tacit knowledge, you have to have firsthand knowledge of something to actually know it. And we
Right.
know this as human beings. Keith, if you read a book on bicycle riding, you can't say I know how to ride a bike until you ride a bike, right?
Exactly.
So if God has to experience suffering God's self in order to forgive it on one hand, in order to be gracious toward those who cause suffering. And until that happens, God cannot say that God knows what it's like to suffer. So I think that can be an answer into why it's like, for those of us who kind of see the universe as like all of our experiences, collective consciousness is like God experiencing the universe in an infinite amount of ways. That's going to include the need for forgiveness and repentance and grace and mercy. And
Hmm.
with those things, suffering is presupposed in all those concepts.
Yes. Suffering is presupposed and death is presupposed, right?
Sure.
It's that whole idea. Death is sort of separate from suffering, although the end result of most suffering is eventually death, of course. But again, to imagine this is also part of the Christian story, right? That there'll be no more death, right? Death will be no
Right.
more. But then that becomes like, well, that just seems ridiculous. So, okay, so if the idea of death is eliminated, nothing ever dies. So, do you know that if death could be eliminated, that within probably 20 years, every human being would look like a giant, sort of like you'd look like the Thing from the Fantastic Four, because the skin cells on your body, which die and fall off probably every couple of days, well, they wouldn't die. those cells would never die because death is abolished. So slowly skin cells would build up on your body to the point where your skin would be like, 2 feet thick. It'd be hard to breathe and eat. It would be ridiculous. So in other words, like, in some ways, it's a little ridiculous to say that we are headed towards a future where there is no death, because then, well, then I guess
Well,
what
I
you're saying
mean,
is no
like,
more birth either, because if
right.
nothing ever died, then the planet would be overtaken
It
again.
would.
Also,
I don't
it'd be
even know. I'm not an
ridiculous.
ecologist, but I don't. I mean, a forest can't exist without death. I mean,
Exactly.
you know. I mean, I garden, so I compost. Like, that's death,
Exactly.
and I need it because then my plants need. I need it for my plants to be healthy next year,
That's
right?
right.
When I add compost into the
So there's no life without death. There is
correct.
no joy without suffering. So it's kind of weird, right, to get to this place of saying, like, we only like all these good things, but we don't want any of these bad things. And we're actually angry at God for not creating a universe that was all good and that there was nothing that we don't like. But that just seems like, even scientifically, impossible. Like, that isn't, I don't think that's possible. At almost every level, cells all the way up to plants and animals, and
Yeah,
like, if there isn't death, there is no room for the rest of life. I don't know.
yeah. So I think that helps on one level. I'll also say that perhaps consciousness, however, doesn't need the life and death cycle.
Right.
Um, because it seems like, at least the way I understand it, consciousness is like the unmoved mover.
Exactly.
So I don't know if that necessarily, because I see God as like pure consciousness and, like
Right.
through us, and I think that there could be something to the fact that that doesn't go through the death and birth recycle, but it seems that everything that is material in some way, and I don't say purely material because I'm not a naturalist, and
Right.
or a materialist, I should
Materialist.
say.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but the consciousness itself, I can only speculate because I unless I've been reincarnated, I haven't died yet.
Right.
Um,
Right. As far as you know, as
but
far as you
but as
remember.
far as I know, I don't know if I have any reason to believe my consciousness doesn't continue.
Right. Yeah. So maybe in one way, this idea that we, in our spiritual and religious terminology, we express this idea that a day is coming, a time is coming when all things will be made new, when death will be no more, when there will be no more suffering. We're not talking about this physical universe that's going to be remade into that kind of a place, but that our consciousness will eventually pass from this place to another place, where outside of the physical material world, where the consciousness continues to exist, but exists in a place, or in a form without a body, uh, where where those things are meaningless. That there is no suffering anymore because I have no body to suffer, to feel any
But
pain.
then,
Right?
okay, but then on the flip side of that is pleasure and bliss, because certainly, like, I get a lot of pleasure from my body,
Yes.
and not just. No, I was going to make a joke, but
I
but you
think
know what I
I
mean.
better know
Like,
where you're going to go with that.
like I need my body to taste good food, and to
Right.
smell a flower,
But there could
to have
still be,
sex,
yeah, yeah, but
to enjoy an old fashioned.
yeah, but those are things that that's bliss and joy and pleasure that we experience through our physical bodies. But it doesn't preclude that without a body we couldn't have ecstatic experiences of joy or bliss apart from a physical body. Like, and then I just
Well,
come to this and I know this again takes us to another discussion maybe. But when you listen to people who share near death experiences, right?
right.
What they all have in common is that they experienced what they describe as this intense feeling of love and peace that's so intense they can't even describe it. They've never, ever in their physical bodies ever experienced anything like this level of love and peace and joy. And so those are that could qualify as bliss, and technically that's something they're experiencing outside of their physical bodies, assuming that's real.
Assuming that's real, yeah. I would ask how one orgasms without a physical body.
Well, no, you can't. I mean, you won't have an orgasm. You won't get to taste a steak. You won't get to
Then I'm
go
saying
surfing.
okay.
But you
Then
would have
okay.
other
So
feelings of joy that are more intense than even what you would have in a physical body.
okay, but I would say then it's kind of incomplete though.
Probably. Well, on one level, it is incomplete, but maybe on another level, it's better. But we can't. We're speaking of something that we don't know of. Like,
Of course,
we're
yeah.
theorizing, right?
Right.
And based on very spotty, spurious testimony and evidence. Maybe true, maybe not true.
All theology is fan fiction. It's okay.
That's exactly right. Yes. So here's another angle to take with this. I don't know if this is fair to say, but as we were thinking about, we were planning to have this conversation, I just thought of like how interesting it would be if we would just flip that question around. Like, why is there suffering in the world? What if instead we asked, why is there good in the world? Why is there joy? Why is there...
I was going to bring that up. I
Yeah.
was literally going to say that. Why
there
is
you
there
go.
beauty? Why is there beauty in the world?
And that to me is an even better question, and an equally existential question. Because again, if we look at the universe as it is, right, the animal kingdom and everything else, man, it's cruel. Man, there's evil. Man, there's like, literally one species eating and devouring another species and just mercilessly and cruel. And, like I've seen videos of chimpanzees capturing and killing little infant gorilla babies and have no remorse, just think, oh, that was great. And you're like, oh, that's so evil. That's so awful. And so in that kind of world, in that kind of like, this is the universe we live in, like we said, yet there's Mozart, there's Bach, there's Picasso, there's beauty. So like that seems to be the anomaly on one level. Like that's what we should be saying. Why is that here? How did this show up?
And I think it's the equally perplexing question for atheists. Like, as difficult as the problem of suffering is for anyone who believes in some sort of God, like, why do we find so much beauty and awe in a sunset with our feet in the sand, sipping on a pina colada, getting a back rub? Like, I mean, like,
yes,
that. And I know, like, atheists will have answers to that. Sure. I know they will. But again, it's like to me, it's like, it's the level of answers that we're giving for suffering. Like, it's not the answer. It's a answer, or it's a group of answers. But and I've heard atheists say answers to those questions. Why is there beauty?
What do they say?
And I'm not... Oh, they just give the kind of answers, of neural pathways and all those things. And they come at it from a materialistic standpoint.
Right.
But to me, it's like, okay, but it's not hitting, like, it's not explaining what I'm experiencing. Right. Or maybe it's explaining what I'm experiencing, but it's not explaining why I find meaning and value in that. Well, it's not a fully satisfactory answer to what I experience, even if it's describing the chemical processes.
Right. No, you're right. No, I see. I can hear atheists saying that, yes, it's a release of endorphins in your brain,
which is all true. All those are true things.
Yes, those are true. Yes. Or, well, why do I find this poem or this song or this movie or whatever, this art, so moving and so meaningful and so beautiful? Well, because your brain has been conditioned to find pleasure in these visual colors or shapes or images or sounds. These sounds are, release some kind of pleasure in your brain when these certain notes come together in certain harmonies, and that's why. So, and again, that's, like you said, that's an answer, but it really isn't the answer, because, I mean, you still aren't explaining this. I apologize, because we could really just go down this rabbit hole so deep. But even like as far as like the human brain and the way we process the world around us, right? So we have these eyes, but our eyes can only see a very narrow range of light, right? There's way more light than we can perceive. And
Yeah.
our ears can only hear a very narrow range of sound. Like they're right now, our frequencies going on higher than we can hear and lower than we can perceive, but they're there. So we don't even fully experience reality as it actually is. We're still, our brains are experiencing a very, very curated, version of the reality that is
Right.
around us. And yet, even in that, man, there's just that you cannot deny there is beauty, right?
Right.
Um, and so, yeah, I think the problem of beauty might be as big a problem for atheists as suffering is for Christians.
That'd be a great title for a book, The Problem of Beauty.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, I gotta write that down.
That's a great
The
no,
problem of
David
beauty.
Bentley Hart needs to write it though.
Exactly, he would be the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I probably couldn't my arms around it the way he could.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It seems. So, like we said at the beginning, we knew we weren't going to be able to just definitively have an answer, the answer, I guess. But I think it definitely is something it's worth considering. It's worth asking yourself these kinds of questions. But to me, it's the ultimate. It's the mystery, right? This goes back to this idea of like, well, we have some ideas, but in the end, this is the closest I can get to maybe it's this and maybe it's that. Like you were saying, I prefer Thomas J. Oord and Mark Harris's answer, although I still have my problems with it. But I think it's, like you said, better than the answers we've had up to this point.
well, and I think we're going to have problems with every answer. And so
Right.
to be fair to them, like, and they would probably acknowledge the fact that this is one of those issues where there's always going to be some sort of there's no explanatory nature
Yeah.
to some shit that just happens, and sometimes ultimately having a humble approach and being able to say I don't know,
Right.
like, if Christians could just do that, like, don't give me your Calvinistic, or don't give me this, well, it's just this simple, well, can't violate free will. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, that's not really I mean, it's like sometimes we just have so many off the cuff answers that are just so flippant and backhanded. It's like, well, that doesn't really satisfy. And
Right.
just maybe have some humility and say sometimes just bad shit happens to people, and
Exactly.
that's just the way it is. We can't really, because I'll be honest, like, if God has a personality and I get to talk to God, I will have my questions.
Of course. Of course.
So of course I don't know if I believe in that kind of God any longer that even has a personality to talk to. So maybe I won't be asking anyone. Maybe I should just ask myself, and I'll go,
Right.
I don't know, man. And they'll go, okay, well, I guess we're in
Yeah.
this together.
Right. I mean, would I've not listened to a whole bunch of his stuff, but it seems to me like someone like Alan Watts would probably say that like this earthly experience we're having right now in our physical bodies, doesn't he say something about how like we're just God in disguise, or we're God playing a game, or
Yeah,
playing
I
a
think
part?
like, yeah, there's I think there's some sort of analogy where, yeah, it's like God's playing a game of hide and seek with himself or
Yes,
something.
yes. And so I think he would probably say something like, yeah, there's suffering in the world, but we've all sort of agreed that this is like we've sort of set up um God, whatever God is, has sort of
Mm,
set up this kind of reality where we each get to sort of play a role and live a life. And I'm going to be an airline pilot, and I'm going to be an actor, and I'm going to be a writer, and I'm going to do a podcast, and we do these things to have these to experience. Like you said, God doesn't know anything until anyone experiences
mm,
suffering and pain and joy and all these kind of things. And so God has sort of created life as a way to experience all these different things. And that would mean both the good and the bad, right? Not just the good. God that has we haven't constructed a reality that's so artificial and fake, right? That nothing bad ever happens, nothing will ever go wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, no. Like, you don't want to see a movie like that. Like, who wants to pay money to go see a movie where nope, nothing ever bad happens? There's no bad guy.
Right.
There's no good guy. Nothing. No one's in any danger. There's no fight scenes. There's no rescue. There's no danger. There's no like, oh, something bad's gonna happen. No, nothing bad's gonna happen. And we're just gonna sit here for the whole movie and just watch waves and flowers and
I
the wind
made
blow.
the in one of the books that I wrote with Mike, I made the analogy of like if Frodo and Sam were never forced to go to Mordor, it might be a charming film about hobbits who garden, but it wouldn't be Lord of the Rings.
And nobody would watch a 4-hour
No.
movie about some
Right.
hobbits gardening and smoking pot.
I mean, I might, but but not everyone else. It's not gonna be a blockbuster. What if though? What if and this is deemed heresy because of origin? It's part of Originism, I believe. The pre-existence of the soul.
Yes.
And what if we all were floating around in this ethereal space and we agreed to this shit and it was like, yeah, it's going to be a shit show. Some of y'all are going to kill each other. Some of y'all are going to do some horrible shit.
But it's going to be so much
but
fun.
but yeah, you're going to learn something and you're not going to know it's like some sort of dream state. It's going to seem super real. Trust me.
Yep. Yep.
And we're like, yeah, I want to experience that once or twice or reincarnation, maybe 10 times.
Yeah, exactly.
But you signed up for this shit, so and it's gonna be confusing as fuck, and it's gonna get messy. But you might learn something. You're gonna grow. You're gonna learn what it's like to forgive. You're gonna learn what it's like to love in spite of, harsh circumstances and trauma and all this. And we're like, okay, I'll take a chance on that.
Yeah,
and poof, here we are.
Yeah, and is this like maybe a third option for how putting our arms around this? I mean, I think that's possible. I think I'm even okay with that in some ways. Like, this is the universe / God / Christ or whatever, learning and growing and experiencing everything, every possible thing.
The truly awe-inspiring and the truly fucked up.
Yeah, and everything in between. Yeah, the full spectrum of everything. And who knows? Then maybe at some point in the future, this experiment, play, act, whatever we're going through, whatever needs to be learned or experienced by God / Christ / universe / source, finally just goes, yeah, okay, yeah, I got it. Okay, good. And then all this goes away. All the suffering goes away, and we end up in a radically different universe where whatever needed to be learned or understood or experienced reaches some, I don't know, some cathartic place where there is no more death and there is no more suffering. I don't know.
None of us know. Yeah, but I think that's sort of similar to the Hindu cosmology of the wheel of samsara. At some point, you jump off the wheel, and then I think you are merged with God or whatever. But I don't know if I like that language exactly either, because I mean, where's the separation between God and myself now?
Right.
So.
Well, it's an illusion, right? It's the illusion of, and again, that illusion of separation is part of the, because again, if all of us are God, but we're each one of us is sort of pretending to be a separate being from everybody else. But ultimately, there's that realization of, but no, that's an illusion. There is no separation from you or me or anything else. We're all still God, that panentheistic idea where, so maybe the separation that we experience or that we sort of perceive is just part of that same, story or play or movie that we're all acting out. I don't know.
Man, if it's a movie or a story or something, it seems like there's a lot of extras. Like, what are y'all doing out there, man?
See, we all think we're the star of the movie, right? This is my movie, and
that's true.
You're a supporting actor in my film, Matt, but you're the star of your film, and I'm just a supporting character in your story.
I don't know if I'm the star, but like,
oh, come on,
I get my name in the credits somewhere.
Yeah, you're at least a Han Solo too.
I got a name. I'm not just like Guy on Street 3. Seems like there's a lot of those guys.
There's a lot of those guys, probably.
What are you doing, man? What are you doing?
Yeah, who knows, man? I don't know. I guess it's so hard to talk about this topic without kind of like chasing down so many other little possible things. So,
Oh, there's so many rabbit holes because like I wanted to go like, well, what if it's just all a simulation? It's like
yes.
or a
And
dream.
that's,
Like it's
yeah,
and you can't disprove it, so it's almost a meaningless conversation. Like you can never prove to me that I'm not in a simulation.
right.
You
Yeah, I
know,
can't prove I'm not. My brain is actually not in a vat
right?
somewhere being hooked up to
Right.
some electrodes. Because how would it be any different than what I'm experiencing now? I mean, I
Well,
can't know that.
see to me it's a moot question because it's like, well, but I'm still experiencing something real in this first person thing. So it's
Right,
kind of what like so what if that's the metaphysical reality that doesn't
right.
change the fact that I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing.
Yes, exactly. You really are experiencing something. You're just not sure the nature of it.
Yeah, exactly. I can't be 100%. I have to take it on faith that you actually exist
Right.
because you cannot prove to me that you exist. Like
That's true.
it could just be it could be a simulation. You're just a figment of my imagination. Everything is.
Right.
But so I have to take it on faith that when you say no, really, Matt, I'm telling you, and I have to say, well, yeah, that's exactly what someone would say who doesn't exist. I have to take it on. I do have to take it on faith. So checkmate, atheists.
Yes.
Um, you have to take it on faith that the other person actually exists.
Right. And you're
It's a
fairly
weird
sure
thing
you
to.
exist. I'm pretty sure I exist. But yeah, everything I'm seeing and hearing and experiencing and touching and smelling and everything else, it's all through, again, my brain is locked in this bone cage of my behind my
Right.
skull. And other than these impulses that it picks up through these, again, very limited organs that are only hearing a little range of sound and only seeing a very narrow range of light and only feeling very simple, heat and pressure and texture through my nerve endings and smelling, certain things. I'm still guessing what all that is, and I think it's this and I
Yeah.
think it's that, but it could be, I
Right.
don't know. How do I know?
Yeah. Mike and I were having some stoner thoughts the other day. Like we planted our garden for the first time, like a full garden since the fire took out everything. And we're just looking at one of the fruit trees that we planted, and I was like, dude, you can't even be sure where that tree is. Like you can only describe it in relation to other trees, in relation
That's
to
right.
your but even if you like close one eye and then close the other eye, it's in a different location according to your perspective,
That's right.
which is just it's like trippy. And then you realize, yeah, you're only picking up the smallest sliver of light, the
Yep.
smallest sliver of sound it might be putting off in the wind. um Even my daughter, like we do these things on YouTube where I can't, like, because I played music and shit,
Yes.
the range of
Yeah.
my hearing is very diminished. Like
Yeah.
she'll put up her hand, boom, I can hear that,
Yes.
and I'm like, I don't hear it for like like six different sounds until it's like a fairly low sound where.
That's right. That's right.
So we do not. Our perspective is so narrow and limited.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Even on things. I mean, if you said, "Where's that tree?" I'm like, "Well, it's 50 feet over there." But where is it in the universe? You can only describe it in relation to other things.
That's exactly right. No, that's exactly right. Yeah, I was doing some research for one of my books about that exact thing, and it was talking about how that yeah, it's hard to say, like you said, how are they saying it? It was something like um, you can only measure the existence of something within space in relation to another point, and if you
Yeah.
don't have another point, it's you have nothing. And I think it was also velocity, or if they're moving away from each other or towards each other or somehow in relation to each other. But if you have one single, that was what it was. It was saying if you just have one single object and you have no other objects, you can't tell if that object is flying at the speed of light, if it's flying forwards or
Right.
backwards or left or right.
Right.
Because it's just a point. And until you give me
Right.
another point of reference, and then I can see, oh, it's traveling really fast away from or towards or next to that other point. But without that point, you got nothing. You have no velocity, no speed, no no point in space for that particular object.
Fuck. It's a crazy universe, man.
It is. It's nuts. Somebody should sell tickets
To what?
to this crazy show.
Maybe there's aliens just watching us.
They're
They
just
figured it
watching
all
and having
out.
a great time, like these idiots.
These fucking morons. Look at these. Look at these apes.
It's like the greatest reality show. They're just like, man, have you seen those guys? Oh,
That's my theory on why they haven't shown up. They're just like, they're there, but they're like, these people are living in the past, man. They're still throwing their shit at each other.
That's exactly
Like,
right.
you want to get down in there? Nah, you good.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I don't think we have graduated enough.
No, we're like we're a old school petri dish right now.
That's that's right. Yeah, I'm teaching this class on this film director Tarkovsky, and one of his films, it's called Solaris. One of the characters makes a comment about space travel, and says that and I think it's a really good observation. He says humanity, like when we go out into space and we're looking for life and all this stuff, he's like, we're not really looking for alien life. We're not looking for what's out there. We just want to extend Earth's boundaries outward. We're actually looking for stuff that basically validates our own humanity, our own existence. If anything, we're looking for a mirror. We're looking for a mirror to reflect back to us our own selves. And I thought, oh, that is so good. I think that's really true. We're not really ready for something completely different, because then that might challenge our own ideas of ourselves. We think we're pretty tough. We think we're pretty awesome. And so if we encountered other life forms that made us realize, yeah, we're not that great. We're kind of dumb. We don't want that. We want something to validate that, yeah, we're pretty smart. We're pretty awesome.
Yeah, I don't think we are, though.
No, we're definitely not.
I mean, we are in one way, but I think we're also,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but we're just like, I don't know.
We're still killing each other over nonsense.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the shit that we fight about, like, it doesn't even make sense when you think about it. Like, like you're bombing them because of what? Like, that's the dumbest. If you really think about it, like,
no,
it's the dumbest shit I've ever heard of.
No, war is the stupidest thing. Really, I think if we could ever, as a species,
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We have this disagreement. So here's how we're gonna solve the disagreement. I'm gonna kill your kids, and you're gonna kill my kids until one of us says, okay, stop, and then the other one wins. Really? That's the best way you can think of to solve problems? And we've been doing this for hundreds of years.
It's just it's so dumb. Like, you're gonna, like, Putin right now. I don't want to use him as a scapegoat, but let me scapegoat him for a second. You don't think, like, I mean, Putin is just basically one of those next guys who does this stupid shit. Then he dies. And then in 100 years, we look back and be like, oh, he was just one of those murderous cunts. So it's like that's it. That's your life. In the history books, you're just a murderous asshole. That's your legacy. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, that's just the dumbest stuff to worry. Like, yeah, eventually you're going to die and you're just going to be looked at as a douchebag.
Right.
Yeah, for all of history.
So this reminds me of this beautiful, I just encourage people to go and watch it. You can find it on YouTube. If you just go to YouTube and you search Carl Sagan, Pale Blue Dot.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Have you heard that? It's so beautiful.
Yeah,
and it's this beautiful thing where he says, there's a part in there where he says, look at this little, because it's like looking at Earth from far, far away in space, right? And we're just this little blue dot against all these other just endless sea of stars, right?
Yeah.
And he says, look at this little pale blue dot. That's us. That's our planet. And he goes, and now just imagine how many hundreds of millions of gallons of blood have been spilled. How many millions of people have been slaughtered so that one guy could control a few acres of land on that little dot, right?
Yeah.
Who killed each other over, my God is bigger than your God, or like, it's like, oh my gosh, when you look at it from that perspective, it is like, oh, what are we doing? It's so stupid.
It's so dumb.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. We're not like, I know we're post-enlightenment, which is kind of a misnomer because it's like, okay, go back like 1,000 years. I mean, I know statistically speaking, violence has gone down. It's trended down, although up in the last couple of years in the United States. But overall, it's like we're not that much different than archaic humans.
No,
we're really not.
No,
and that's very humbling. Like, we should be very humble about the fact that we can fuck shit up. Really, I mean, we're really good at fucking things up,
right?
And we're not like. I think if an alien species gets anywhere, it's because they work together, and that's why we don't get off this fucking planet. And that's why we don't care for the planet too.
Right, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's I totally agree.
But that has nothing to do with the Odyssey, or it kind of does. But rabbit trails, dude.
Exactly. Trails. Well, cool, man. Well, this has been good. Yeah. I've enjoyed the conversation, man.
I have as well. Any last parting words? Rate and review.
No. I don't know. Yeah, please rate and review. Leave comments. If you have a better idea than what Matt and I just came up with, or as we were rambling, if somebody was like, "Oh, hey, what about this?" Leave us a comment. Please rate and review. Share it with your friends on social media. We appreciate it.
You know where to find Keith and I. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can call the hotline 240-343-7379. We just hijacked that. So
that's right.
Yeah. I mean, look. Yeah, hit us up if you have ideas on suffering. If you have your own perspective, I'm sure you do.
Absolutely.
Or maybe you just have questions, so that's good too. So.
Yeah, we'll take your questions.
All right, we'll see you next time, Keith.
All right, man. Take care, dude.
All right, bye.
Bye.